Today we will discuss about the design of mechanical brakes, and in this class we will have a brief introduction about the brakes, its classification and all, and followed by the design procedure. So now let's look into the introductory part of the mechanical brakes. So we all know that basically a mechanical device, brake is a mechanical device which inhibits motion, which opposes the motion. That is the actual purpose of the actual way in which the brake works. It inhibits the motion. So basically, when we talk about inhibition, there are two main purposes. The function of brake is not just to inhibit, but also it has got two more functions. One is to slow down or stop the vehicle in the shortest possible time at the time of need. So whenever we are in need to stop the vehicle or to reduce the speed, the brake should serve the purpose. And the second one is that to control the speed of the vehicle at turns and also at times of driving down in a hill slope. So whenever we go down in a hill slope, we have to control. So control, reduce, stop. That's how the basic function of a brake is being defined. Now usually how the mechanism works or how the design works. The answer is, it's in a very simple sentence. We can say that by applying some amount of pressure on the braking element, what happens? It increases the normal reaction and thereby the frictional force. That's how the braking action takes place. So if you want to stop something, you are going to apply some amount of force. So because of this force, the normal reaction will increase. And we know that the frictional force is proportional to the normal reaction. We can say that frictional force is equal to mu into Rn, or it can also be stated as mu into Fn, the normal force. So whenever the normal force increases, subsequently the frictional force. So we are applying some amount of pressure to the braking element to increase the normal reaction, thereby the frictional force. That's how the system works. So relative rubbing and the effect of friction. That's how the brake system works. It has to rub against the rotating part or the sliding part, and by constant relative rubbing and because of the action of high coefficient of friction, the braking takes place. Now what happens at the time of braking? We know that based upon the thermodynamics principles, energy can be neither created nor destroyed. So when a body is in a rotating condition, it possesses some amount of rotational kinetic energy. So if you want to brake it, definitely you are supposed to convert this energy, and that kind of conversion is happening towards the heat energy part. So the kinetic energy is being converted into heat energy. That's the reason why the braking system heats up when we apply the brake. So I don't know whether you have noticed it or not. When we go to the cases of racing cars or high speed cars, and when you apply the brake suddenly, even the brake disc, the brake liners, everything turns into red hot. So that much amount of heat is being generated at the interface, that much amount of friction, and thereby the heat. So the final conversion is towards the heat energy. And most importantly, we have to make sure of one thing, that is, while we apply a brake, it should not lock the system. That's mainly applicable in the case of automobiles. So when you apply the brake suddenly, and if the brake locks the tire, the steerability of the system reduces. And that's the reason why these days ABS, anti-lock braking system, is people are more interested in ABS, because even when you apply the force, along with the application of force, ABS provides us with the ability to steer. So that should be a basic function or the basic criteria that the brake should meet. If the brake, after the application of brake, if the tire or the rotating element become completely locked, what happens is that the higher chances of slipping will take place. So that is one of the most important things that need to be taken care of. And when we talk about the brake, majority of you will be thinking about the disc brakes. This is the most common type of brake that you have seen nowadays. That was not the scenario, but these days disc brakes, they are highly efficient. They offers high braking in a very short span of time, and these disc brakes are nowadays very common in almost all type of vehicles compared to the conventional type of brake. This is the internally expanding shoe brake. You can see that these are the shoes which is rubbing against the brake drum, internally expanding shoe brakes. So these brakes were not visible are not visible in the automobiles. So you might not have witnessed this kind of brakes, but in this course we will definitely study the internally expanding shoe brake. That is one of the topic that we need to study. So this is not a visible, this is not being, this is more inside. That's the reason why we have not witnessed this particular brake. But that's not the case of this disc brake. Most of the two-wheelers nowadays has the disc brake. You have a disc on the other side of the disc. You have got two pads that are called the braking pads. When you apply the braking force, these braking pads rub against the disc, and thereby it stops the disc. That's the basic working principle, right? Now moving into the classification. If you move into the classification, we can classify the brakes into different methods. One is by the method of actuation. We have foot operated brakes are there, hand brakes are there, and these two types of brakes are mostly available there in the our cars, automobiles. We have a hand brake and we have a foot operated brake. We are using these brakes not only in automobiles but also in many applications, in lift, hoisting drums, many places we have to apply the brake. Now, based upon the mode of operation, this is one of the most important category where we have mechanical brakes, hydraulic brakes, air brake, vacuum brake, and electric brake. Among these, the last three are called as the power brakes. They are called as the power brakes. Now, you might wonder what is the speciality of all these brakes. One thing you should keep in your mind is that the basic working principle is one and the same. You have a braking element which is rubbing against the rotating part, thereby it offers resistance, and finally it brings the system into stop. That's the basic working operation. But mechanical brakes are nothing but we are applying some amount of mechanical forces directly. We are applying the forces. Mechanical forces are being transferred to the braking element. But when it comes to the case of hydraulic brakes, you are using a fluid. You might have noticed the oil brake fluids that you use in your automobile, brake fluids. What is the speciality? So hydraulic brakes works on the principle of Pascal's law, and when you apply the force, this fluid which transmits this power to the braking element. So it offers a very efficient braking system, and you can transmit good braking force into the braking elements. So when it comes to the case of air brakes, we are using the air or the pneumatic system to apply the brake. That's how the system works. So based upon the method of application of force or the method of generating the force, all these classifications has come into picture. Only that is the reason. When you use the air brake comes into picture. When you use a fluid, hydraulic brakes comes into picture. When you use the electricity to generate the braking force, then it's called as the electric brake. That's how this classification works. Now, based upon the action, we have got four-wheel brakes, we have rail-wheel brakes. So very self-explanatory, and we have internally expanding brakes. This is one of the most important category which most of the automobiles now uses. Nowadays are trying to shift towards the disc brake along with ABS, and lot of advancement is being happening in the automobile field, because day by day the efficiency of the engine is increasing, the top speed or the maximum attainable speed is also increasing. So whenever we are obtaining speed to a particular peak, definitely in parallel to that we should also increase the efficiency of the brake. So as the engine technology increases, definitely the braking system has also should increase. Now we have got externally contacting brake. Under that we have got shoe brake and band brake. So in this course of study, we will be focusing on this external type of this of last category. Internally expanding shoe brake, shoe brakes, externally applied shoe brakes and band brakes. That is the area where we are going to focus our discussion. Now let's discuss about the topic of study, which is the shoe brake. How exactly the system works. So under the shoe brake, you have got two categories. One is a single shoe brake and double shoe brake. So this picture is self-explanatory. You can see a shoe here. This is a shoe that is rubbing against a brake drum. So this is the brake drum, and there is a slight clearance is there. What happens is when you apply a force here, say F or FA, what happens? This shoe rubs against the brake drum, and thereby it produces frictional force and makes the system to stop. Now when you have got two different shoes on the opposite sides, you can see here, it is called as the double shoe brake. The working principle is one of the same. Now comes the band brakes. Under the band brakes, you have got two different category. One is a simple band brake and the second one is the differential band brake. Okay. After explaining the basic working principle, I will explain the braking forces and the method it is being generated. Now, band brakes means you have a brake drum here. This is the brake drum, and upon which you can see a band. This is the band which is going over the brake drum, and the one end of the brake drum band is being connected to the lever. This is the lever on which we are going to apply some amount of force. And as a result, this band tightens towards the drum, thereby it produces some amount of frictional force and reduces the speed. So this is called as a simple band brake. Simple band brake. The reason why it is called as simple is because of the method in which this band is being fixed. We can see that in simple band brake, one end of the rod, one end of the band is being connected to the fulcrum. That is the essential criteria. One end of the band, one end, it can be this end or this end, doesn't matter. So one end of the band should get connected to the fulcrum. If none of the ends are getting connected to the fulcrum, then the arrangement will be something like this. This is called as the differential band brake. You can see one end is being connected at some different location, and other end is also connected from some different location from the fulcrum. And one more thing is that doesn't mean that this connection has to be on the either side of the fulcrum. No, there is no category condition like that. See, you can have this connection, you can shift this connection at this position also, but it should not be on the hinge or the fulcrum. It should not be there on this particular joint. If it gets connected to the joint, then it is a simple band brake. Otherwise, it is called as a differential band brake. That's the basic difference, and you should understand that. Now comes the internally expanding shoe brake. Don't worry about this dimension. This is just a figure that indicates some amount of inclination and all those things. Here you can see that this is the brake drum. You can see this is the drum, and you have a lining, and you are applying some amount of force. The application of forces results in the expansion. It is internally expanding. We have a pivot here. This is a pivot. This is a pivot. These are the pivots. So based upon with respect to this pivot, this brake is going to rub internally in the brake drum and thereby offers the brake. And the braking element is the lining. So whenever there is a large amount of friction or wear and tear, we have to change the brake lining. So brake lining is the member that is going to offer large amount of friction. Now we'll look at the how the force is, or the free body diagram of the brakes. Right? Now, if you look here, we can say that these brakes transmits some amount. They are not transmitting, they possess some amount of power, P. It possesses some amount of power, P. So, when the brake is rotating at an RPM of N, and it carries a power P, then the relation between power and torque is 2 pi Nt by 60. Or otherwise, we have another equation to calculate torque, that is called as 9.55 10 power 6 P by N. So here P has to be substituted in kilowatt. This is the equation that is given in your data handbook. Anyway, these two equations are one and the same. They are not different equations, they are same. Here you have got constants 2 and pi and 60. Here everything is being tabulated to this 9.55 10 power 6. That's all. So here you will get the value of torque in Newton mm. One more thing. Anyway, either you can use this equation or this equation to find out the torque. So right now, from the power we can obtain the amount of torque that is being carried by the brake. Now our aim is to absorb this power, this torque. Right? Now let's say, let's split this system into two. Now let's say this is, this is the brake drum. Say this is the brake drum. So what happens when you apply a force here? Here one force generates. That force is being pushing this brake shoe downwards on the brake drum. Right? Now that is the force here. This is the one force Fn, normal force acting on the brake drum. Anyway, suppose here they have given that the direction of rotation is anti-clockwise. Right? So if this is rotating in the anti-clockwise direction and having a torque of T, then definitely in order to stop this, we need to give a torque in the opposite direction, or the torque should generate a moment in the opposite direction, clockwise direction. That means the tangential force will be something like this. This is how the tangential force will act. So since the radius is R, torque can also be rewritten as Ft into R. It's a very simple equation. We are not doing any bigger integration or anything like that. We are just following the basic force torque relations, Ft into R. So this Ft into R is going to create a clockwise resisting torque, which is going to oppose this applied torque, and thereby the system is going to stop. This is the case of a brake drum. Now let's discuss about the brake shoe. What happens on the brake shoe? Because we are supposed to design the brake shoe. We are not design of brake means we are going to design the brake shoe and the lever. We are not going to design the brake drum because that's already available with us. Okay, so this is the shoe, and we have to apply the basic Newton's principle, equal and opposite forces. So here when you apply a normal force on the brake drum, we have the normal reaction Fn, which is equal to Fn on the brake shoe. Now when you take the case of Ft, here also you have a reaction in the opposite direction like this. This is Fn and Ft. So whenever you draw the free body diagram, make sure that you use the free body diagram of the brake shoe, not the brake drum, because brake shoe is associated as or attached to the brake lever, and to design the brake lever and brake shoe, we should know the forces acting on the brake shoe, not the forces acting on the brake drum. And it's very easy to get the sign of Ft, direction of Ft. You just follow the direction of the brake drum. It is having an anti-clockwise turn, and if you bring that anti-clockwise direction here, we can say that this is the direction of Ft. And if it is rotating in the clockwise direction, we can say that the tangential force acting on the brake shoe is in this direction. So it's purely based upon the direction of the brake drum, and this is how the forces on the brake shoe and the brake drum will look like. Right? Now, what is the value of this Ft? That is also very simple. We can say that I have already stated that the frictional force Ft is equal to mu into R. Here, instead of R, we can write Fn. Right? So the value of Ft equal to mu into Fn. So if from this equation, if you can find the value of torque, using this equation you can find the value of Ft, and using this equation you can find the value of Fn. It's a very simple equation. These are the only forces that are acting on the system. There is no other forces acting on the system. So this is how you have to understand a simple shoe brake. Now when it comes to the case of a double shoe brake, the same system of forces are being used. Only thing is that when you take the case of brake shoe, I am discussing about the brake shoe, then here the normal force is in this direction, Fn1, and here the normal force is in the direction Fn2. And when you take the first shoe, say this is one, this is the second shoe, and on the first shoe the direction of Ft is something like this. This is the direction of Ft, and here the direction of Ft is like this. If you take the anti-clockwise rotation on this shoe, it is going to take this direction, and on this shoe it is going to take this direction. So this is the direction of Ft2 and Ft1. So in a single shoe we have only one Ft to stop the system. Here we have got two Ft1 and Ft2. Now let's look what is the case of a band brake. Here also we are bothered about the forces acting on the lever, not on the band, on the drum. So when you take the case of a lever, we can say that if you take the case of a simple band brake, if you take the case of a lever, say this is the lever, right? And you have a fulcrum here and one end is being connected here. And when you take the case of tension, say F1, or it can be F1 or F2, it is purely based upon the direction of rotation. For example, if it is possessing a clockwise rotation, this is going to be tight side and this is going to be F2. And if it is going to rotate in the anti-clockwise direction, then this is going to be slack side and this is going to be tight side. That is the only difference. So we can see how the slack side and tight side will change based upon direction of rotation. And based upon that, we have here F1 or F2, and here we have second place point where here we have the second point where the band is being connected. So that is also named as F1 or F2. This is purely based upon the direction of rotation. And even if, for the simplicity of calculation, even if there is a slight inclination for this force, there is no need to consider that while taking the moment about the fulcrum O. So here you have applied the force here. This is the value of F. So when you take the moment about O, there is no need to resolve this force or any force on the brake drum. Directly take the forces. In the actual practice, definitely we have to resolve it, but we are going to design on the higher side. We are going to introduce more factor of safety, so there is no need to resolve. Directly we can take the value of F1 and F2, or F1 or F2. Definitely this force is not going to create any kind of moment on the lever because it is acting on the fulcrum. So there is no perpendicular distance, so definitely this is not going to give you any kind of moment. Only thing is that F1 or F2, which is acting away from the fulcrum, will provide you with some kind of moment. So you have to solve the moment equation when it comes to the case of band brake. to find out. Now, since it's a tension value, we have got two equations. F1 by F2 is equal to e to the power of mu theta, and we know that the tangential force Ft is nothing but F1 minus F2 into R. These are the very simple equations that we can use. F1 minus F2 into R. This is the tangential force that is going to develop in the system, right? And this definitely we have the torque equation. We can also find out the tangential force. No issue. So using these two equations, we are going to find the value of F1 and F2, and after that we are going to solve the moment equation to design the brake lever. So the moment has to be taken here also. When it comes to the case of this lever also, we have to take the moment. So when you take the lever, for example, say if you are taking this moment lever here, you have the F here, you have the Fn here, and definitely you have at some point you have the Ft here, right? So we have to take the moment about the fulcrum point. Here also we have to take the moment. So the way in which we take the moment, everything will be discussed when it comes to the case of design. And while we designing it, we will talk about all these things, how the moment is being taken and all those things. And for shoe brakes, in your data handbook, the equations are directly available, so there won't be any kind of confusions, right? For example, for say I will give an example here for your better understanding. Say you have a system here, and say the distance between the fulcrum, say the fulcrum and the point Ft is C, and say let's take the dimensions here. Say this is A and B, and if you take the moment about O, here say C, this is going to come somewhere here, so this is not C, so the value of C is something like this, C, for this figure. So if you take the moment about the O1, it is going to be F1 into A, right? Now we are going to consider the normal force here, Fn. So Fn into B plus Fn into B, clockwise direction. Now we have to consider the Ft. So you just look here. If you take the anti-clockwise direction, this is going to be the direction of Ft. So this Ft into the perpendicular distance is C, which is going to create an anti-clockwise rotation. So negative Ft into what? C. This is the moment equation that we are going to use. So it has to be F minus F into A, right? We are equilibrium equation, we are equating it to 0, and if you substitute the value of Ft in terms of Fn or Fn in terms of Ft, how it will look like. Say I am going to substitute Fn in terms of, or Ft in terms of Fn. So it is going to be minus F into A plus Fn into B minus Ft is nothing but mu into Fn into C. This is equal to 0, and we can, I will rewrite this equation. I will rewrite this equation as F into A equal to Fn into B minus mu into Fn into C, right? So F is equal to, actuating force F is equal to Fn, if you take in bracket, B minus mu C by A. The reason why I explained this one is, this is in terms of Fn, and if you substitute Fn in terms of Ft, this equation will come in terms of Ft. But what I want to explain is that you just look at the expression within the bracket, B minus mu C. B is a physical dimension here, and mu is coefficient of friction, C is also a physical dimension. So B minus mu C. Now you just think what happens if B, say what happens, say B minus mu Z equal to 0 or less than or equal to 0. If the value of mu Z is greater than C, what happens? This the bracket will be less than or equal to 0 and the actuating force will become 0 or negative. Right? That means F becomes 0 or negative. A rare condition. What is the meaning? F is equal to 0. Okay, we can say that actuating force is 0 to get the braking. And what is the meaning of negative? Same thing. Or we can imply that without even applying the force, the system gets braking effect. And this is called as the self-locking. The most important definition you should understand. Self-locking. Self-locking. So you may be asked to find out the condition of self-locking. The condition is that B should be less than or equal to mu C. This is the self-locking condition. Suppose if the system was in a clockwise rotation, this sign would have become plus. So B plus mu C. Never ever this equation is going to become negative. Such kind of brakes are called self-energizing brakes. Self-energizing. So these two are the most important concepts you should keep in your mind: self-locking condition and self-energizing condition. Same thing is applicable here also. We can find out the conditions for self-locking. So while explain design procedure, I will definitely talk about the this self-locking and the way in which we are going to calculate that. So in the next class, I will discuss the design procedure for the shoe brake. So wait for that. We'll meet in the next class. Thank you.